Hi, my name is Mr. Clark. I am the teacher in charge of GCSE Physical Education at Northgate High School. Here is a short presentation video to tell you all about the GCSE PE, what it involves, what it is about, and why you should do it. So, what skills do I gain from studying PE? Well, a lot of people say, why should I do PE and what is in it for me? So you can get better communication skills. Obviously, if you think about performing in a sporting environment, it requires people to communicate effectively with other people. If you look at a team sport particularly, all the best team sports in the world and the best teams in the world have effective communication skills. Obviously, communication skills is something that employers want when you go further on and you go into the world of employment. Social skills allows you to work alongside other people. You see success. Yes, you also see failure, but it's how you deal with success and failure and problems and overcome those problems and actually get better because of that. And again, another skill set that is really valuable out in the employment world. When you're performing as a sportsman, sportswoman, you analyze and evaluate your own performances and that of other people to make yourself better and become more effective. So it also improves your analytical skills and you can start looking at things in the wider aspect rather than just the narrow. And then last of all, physical fitness. It's widely acknowledged that being fit, being healthy is really important these days, and being physically fit is an advantageous position to be in. So there's a number of different careers you can go into. Obviously this is not exhaustive as a list, but there's a whole range of different things you could go out there and do. Sports science, PE teacher, physiotherapist, a professional sports person, sports coach or consultant. You can be involved in sports policy at the local councils or at national and governing bodies, diet and fitness instructors, or just a personal trainer. There are so many different employment paths you could actually utilize PE for. If you didn't want to use PE specifically in your career, obviously it's good to combine with other things because it shows something about you as an individual. Some subjects require you to have degrees in PE or a qualification in PE, but you obviously need to maybe look into those a little bit better and see what background they need. So if you are thinking of going on to university after sixth form, etc., it might be worth just looking to see what your career path requires or finds desirable so that you can basically plan the right pathway for yourself. So for GCSE, physics, chemistry, biology go well at A level, but also A-level PE. So think about your plan, think about where you're going, think about what subjects you can pair up with each other. So when you select GCSE PE, you're going to be assessed in a number of different ways. You have 2 exam papers. Each exam paper is 1 hour and 15 minutes long. They're sat at different times. Paper 1 involves the human body and movement, and it looks at things like applied and A&P, so the skeleton, the muscles, how they interact together, joints, levers and axes, planes of motion and joints. Movement analysis looks at the biomechanics of movement. Physical training, so you can look at different methods of training, different components of training, principles of training, how to put together a fitness training session, loads of different things like that, all relating to the physical. We're going to look at how your body responds to exercise. You can look at cardiovascular responses to exercise, respiratory responses to exercise, and we're going to put all that together to see how the performer works and what happens when we exercise. Paper 2 is more about socio-cultural things. So we'll start with some psychology. We'll then look at things like sponsorship, drugs in sport, commercialism, media, sponsorship, spectator behavior and hooliganism, health, fitness and well-being, and we'll bring all that together to look at sport in the wider world. Now, generally speaking, most of paper 1 will be done in year 10 and most of paper 2 will be done in year 11. Now that's 30% for each, so that's 60%. So the other 40% comes from 3 different sporting activities, and then 10% for a piece of written coursework that is done to combine a bit of the knowledge of the theory to a practical scenario. So let's have a look at those different elements. So you've got to do 3 different sporting activities. One has to come from the team activities list, one has to come from the individuals activities list, and then you have to choose a third one which can be from either. Now the different colours is a suggestion of where you could do those sports. The ones in red, generally speaking, are ones we have easy access to within the school. The ones in blue, if you're doing dance at GCSE, we can use the evidence of your dance in that subject and just bring it over. The ones in green are ones that we won't be able to offer in school, or we're unlikely to be able to offer in school unless numbers are really good, and therefore the green ones are more than likely going to have to be done outside of school, and you'll simply gain evidence of that through some video footage of you performing at that particular activity. Now at the end of this presentation there's a couple of slides that I'll show you which have links where you can't do different activities together. So for example, you can't do rugby league at the same time as doing rugby union. You can't do skiing and you can't do snowboarding. So there's some different combinations that you can't do. It's quite a long list, so I've left that. I'm not going to talk through it, but I will put them on later on, and then you can just pause the presentation so you can read those a little bit more in detail. So each sport is then divided into 2 parts. So the first part, which is worth 10 marks, is based on skills. It's how you can perform the core skills that each sport is noted for in an isolated situation. We put you in certain drills, and those drills are then progressed, so they're being made slightly harder, slightly more difficult, and also more competitive. And the idea then is you maintain those skills as that drill is performed. The competitive situation becomes a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging, and might involve more people if it was a team activity, and it builds it up, but it won't be at the full game scenario. So you're marked out of 10. It's marked in bands. So for example, this is the 4th band out of a possible 5, and it's marked from 7 to 8, and this is badminton. So this is a candidate or student that would get 7 or 8 out of 10 for their skills element, and the description in that box is what we'd expect to see from them when they're performing. Now, as well as the skills part, you're then going to be assessed in your full competitive game element. Now, this is marked out 15, so it's slightly heavier weighting for this. Now, I've put the same band up again. So this is a student who's scoring 10 to 12 out of 15. So it's equivalent to about a 7 or 8 again, if we were going to do a raw crossover score. And the content of the game, again, you can't do singles and doubles, but you can do both separately. So you can be assessed as a doubles badminton player if you don't play on your own. If you do doubles, it's a team sport. If you do singles, it's an individual sport. So the description in the box is what we'd expect to see you playing when you do that particular game. Now, if we looked at 3 typical sports that students generally take part in the most at Northgate, the skills that we'd look for: badminton, serving, overhead shots, underarm shots, net play, and smashes. So we'd look at those skills and we'd mark you out of 10 for your ability to demonstrate those skills, to begin with in isolation and then in more progressively difficult situations. In football, we're looking for passing and receiving, dribbling, shooting, heading, tackling, and all of those different elements would be marked out of 10, and then your game element would be the separate bit later on. And then finally for netball, passing and receiving, different types of pass, dodging, marking a player, shooting, footwork and movement. So out of those 3 bits, they're all the skills, and they'll get marked out of 10 marks. We then look at you for your game activities, and we assess you while you're playing competitively. And that combines 25 marks for each. 3 sports marked out of 25 makes 75, and then we have a piece of coursework which is worth 10%. So in your coursework, again, it's quite long-winded. I'm not expecting you to read all this now. You may pause the presentation and you can have a read, but this is worth 10% of the total mark. So what this does is it allows you to take an activity. It has to be from the syllabus, but it doesn't have to be one of the 3 that you're doing, and you're going to analyze that piece of performance. So you're going to analyze what your strength is, and it's going to be a component of fitness as a strength. You're then going to look at a component of fitness that is a weakness. So for example, as a footballer, you might say that your cardiovascular endurance was a strength, but your speed was a weakness. We'll then look at a skill that's a strength and a skill that's a weakness. So for example, as again staying with the football, it might be that your heading skills are your strength, and it might be that your dribbling skills are your weakness. We then look at the 2 weaknesses and we try and improve those. So for the speed, we then look at putting a high intensity interval training session on to try and improve our speed. For our dribbling, what we might then do is we might apply some of the psychology stuff from the element, and we might look at guidance, and we might look at feedback. So we might suggest that a coach videos you and gives you some verbal and visual guidance and feedback upon your performance. Now, I must stress at this point, you do not have to do this in terms of the training and the actual action of the videoing, but you need to write about it theoretically, and the theory you have to write has to be sound. And that's marked out of 25 as well, and that plus your 3 sports makes up the remaining 40% of the course. Now, quite often every year when we have the Opens evening, the main thing we're asked is, what is the difference between Gcsepe and a BTEC in sports? There's 2 different routes. The Gcsepe is more of your standard exam-based work, where you spend 2 years doing all the theory work, combining all that knowledge together for terminal summative exams at the end of it, whereas the BTEC in sport is a little bit more coursework driven, where you sit 4 units and each unit is then assessed. 3 of them are assessed internally, and 1 of them is done as a sort of a computer-based test. For more information on the BTEC, you can watch the BTEC summary in their video presentation as well. But there are distinct differences. I've tried to put them together there in the table. Again, if you want to pause it, have a quick look through and watch at a later point the video on the BTEC in sport. So here is the list of some of the individual activities which I mentioned earlier. So this has got a combination of things that you can't do together. So gymnastics, for example, you can do floor routines and apparatus only. Cycling, it must be racing, it cannot be tricks. So there's loads of different things there. Have a look down the list, see if there's anything that you might be interested in terms of sports. But I would suggest that if you're doing these sports outside of school, you must be doing it at a relatively high competitive level, where you're competing regularly. For team activities, similar kind of scenario. Looking down at the list, you need to make sure that it meets the criteria, and again, you can pause the presentation, have a look down the list, see if there's any combinations that you can do or can't do. So just to finish off, quite often we have students that say, well, I don't know what to do, what shall I take, I can't think of it. My top tip is do the GCSE subjects that you enjoy. You're going to spend 2 years doing these subjects. It needs to really be something that you enjoy doing and that you'll be successful at. So that's my top tip. The address at the top is where you can find the syllabus that's online. If you follow that, you will be able to find it and just download it and have a look through that yourselves. It's a PDF file, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. If you do still have any questions relating to the Gcsepe, first instance, what I would suggest you do is you have a teacher that you have regularly in your PE lessons that you feel you can speak to more freely about things and that knows you maybe better. Then just send them an email, and I'm sure they'll contact you back relatively swiftly to answer any questions that you've got. We've got a whole team of PE teachers, and we all know pretty much most things about you as an individual and whether or not it's going to be suitable for you, and we can also fill in any gaps. If you've got any further questions, my email address is at the bottom there, sjc@northgate.suffolk.sch.uk. Please feel free to send me an email if you've got any questions, and I'll come back to you with the answers as soon as I can do. And that's the GCSE in PE at Northgate. Thanks for listening, and I hope you choose it.